I want to introduce a new series called the Seduction series. Seduction is a superpower. It is the power of influence and enchantment too. It's like we go under the spell of something or someone. Its effect is subtle and also insidious, so we might miss its hold over us, but it has the power to hold us tightly in its grip. We usually think of seduction between a man and a woman, but actually it's everywhere in our lives. It permeates our culture, it's in advertising, in marketing, in politics. It's the same casting of a spell, luring someone towards you with power. But I want to talk about an unconventional way of looking at seduction. It's not just people or marketing on the outside of us, but the inside. Our emotions, for instance, our moods, our thoughts and feelings, our attitudes and our habits, like anger, disappointment, despair, even self-absorption like narcissism. They suck us in and blindly seduce us for long periods of time. And I want to emphasize here that such is the power of negativity, all negativity. It's a dark energy, like a black hole where we disappear into, and it robs us of the possibility of getting out of it. My point is that we allow ourselves to be sucked in by a strong force that we feel we cannot resist. Yet, we are co-creators in this force, and we are co-creators of our happiness. Then why do we do this? Simply because we don't know we have another choice. The purpose of this series is to learn ways to see through the gloom to the other side, where hope lives. There is a win we really want to get to. That is its purpose. Life always gives us a win in every challenging, stressful situation. It's our job to find it. So, through this series, let's explore the real reason underneath our attraction to these unpleasant emotions, why we allow ourselves to stay in the dark, and let's explore the journey to the other side of the rainbow, shall we?
Join spiritual psychologist and India's #1 biofeedback practitioner, Ritu Malhotra, as she guides you through the paths of self-discovery and personal transformation so that you can live in alignment with your values and purpose. You are listening to the Cellular Alchemist podcast, and here's your host, Ritu Malhotra.
They say if you want God to laugh, tell him your plans. Things do not always go as planned. As I think back at the time when things didn't go as expected, what I really needed to do was to check my expectations. Were they unrealistic? I may have been really optimistic, and there was a high probability of it happening, but were they realistic, my expectations? If I had paused, assessed the possibilities, I may not have felt so defeated or disappointed or even inadequate. As a wise old sage once said to me, it's when you have expectations that you open the door for disappointment. So no appointments, no disappointments. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Let's really get into it and see what happens when disappointment plagues any of us. Disappointment seduces us into a state of victimhood, where we begin to see ourselves as wronged by people and life itself. And there are numerous aspects of this seduction. For example, it stops us from taking chances and risking change. When someone we love disappoints us, we may lose our sense of compassion. And then we find it hard to be mindfully present to them or to the situation. And how about this? Disappointment sucks out our heart connection. When we can't help but disappoint somebody, even when it's right thing to do. And most importantly, it seeps into memory and stays there. And we carry it around for a long, long time, even if it's purposeless. And the price is heavy because it sucks us of our enthusiasm. Also, we know that some disappointment is part of daily life, but it never comes by itself. It carries with it heaps of sadness, resentment, and anger, which is what makes life tougher. Seemingly small stuff like traffic jams, a messy house, or the food got burnt, that can trigger a heavy reaction. That is the voice of the ego. Our ego feels the disagreement, the criticism, the insult, and if we go a step deeper, we can't help but feel disrespected or unappreciated, and maybe unsupported or unloved or even uncared for. When I say that disappointment is a seduction, I mean that it seduces us into hurting our core values. And what are our core values? Our core values are kindness. It's an intrinsic part of us. Our trust, our affection, and love. Since this podcast is about finding the win in all these negativities, let's see how we can keep our values as a priority in our interactions. Because that is what we're really looking for underneath all the hurt and the pain. We can start by regulating our responses to our expectations. I think we can start there. We can start by responding differently to our disappointments. The validation that we seek from others, we can give ourselves. For example, I'm disappointed, but I'm okay. This is what I'll do to improve the situation or my experience of it. Now that's possible to do, isn't it? Or let's say if the food got burnt, I could say, did I really need those calories? I will eat something healthy instead. Or I'm stuck in traffic. Okay, what can I do? I'll listen to a helpful podcast instead. Yes, the house gets messy, but let me keep the harmony in the house rather than trying to be a drill sergeant and wanting everything to be absolutely perfect. And if someone criticizes me, I'll realize that maybe there's an element of truth in it, even if it's just 2%. And I'll focus on that. I'll put my energy on the improvements instead of the 98% criticism. That's possibly false. So, what are your small or big disappointments or expectations? Look within yourself. Focus on the ones that are about values and see what you can do to improve each one. It takes time and effort, and it's a labor of love. And so, so worth it. Pema Chodron, the Buddhist sage and teacher, says, when there's a big disappointment, we don't know if that's the end of the story. It may just be the beginning of a great adventure. So, let's look for that adventure.
That was this week's episode for the Cellular Alchemist podcast with spiritual psychologist Ritu Malhotra. Don't forget to follow the podcast on your listening app so that when the new episode drops, you do not miss out on the chance to change your life by changing your beliefs.